What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Hope you enjoyed that elevator music. I feel like I'm on hold waiting to schedule a dentist appointment or something, but you know they don't tell us. They mix it up.
You want to hear something funny about hold music? Last summer, I was on hold for like a physiotherapist or something like that, and the hold music was "I Want You Back" by Take That, the 90s British pop band, but it was flutes. So it's just a flute arrangement of "I Want You Back, I Want You Back" and like that was, it was just that looping for like 10 minutes.
It's Ron Burgundy playing the jazz flute for 10 minutes.
It was kind of weird, but whatever.
Another big old slate from the NHL here tonight. 3 games last night, 12 again here tonight. Couple teams on a back-to-back here. Couple good matchups. By good, I mean there's really bad teams playing each other, and those are generally fun for DFS. There's a couple of totals that have steamed. There's a couple of garbage matchups. The slate has everything. It doesn't have Colorado. It doesn't have Toronto. It does have Edmonton. But, you know, with dynamic pricing, I don't think like the big guns truly – you're not going to see like 30% Colorado one on these big slates anymore just because they'll probably be priced into a range where it's like really hard to play them. So I don't know. I've gone back and forth with this dynamic pricing. I'm starting to come around on it. I've gotten more comfortable building with it. So we'll see how it goes. How do you like? I know we both probably like the old pricing better, but I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable with this.
Yeah, I don't really mind it because, like I said on the other show, it's if some players are getting overpriced, that has to mean that some players are getting underpriced. And I think it's just about finding, because one thing about the NHL is the newer NHL is like, quote, more predictable than it was even just like 5 years ago or 4 years ago. Good teams win more than they used to over bad teams. Bad teams win less against good teams, so on and so forth. But it's still a random game, right? Like the Chicago Blackhawks will still are an awful team, and they'll still have 5 or 6 games a year where they'll score 5+ goals. They'll still win 20 games, which is a quarter of the season or whatever. So it's still a random game, and I think with the dynamic pricing that you just have to consider ownership a little bit more. So I don't mind it. One thing I do mind is these 12-game slates. You're right. Like I really hate this type of schedule. I know a lot of people in our Discord don't like it either. The good news is Saturday night, depending on what they do, it's 8, maybe 9 games. And then starting next week, they're going to a much more balanced schedule, basically right until the end of the season. So there'll still be the odd like 11-game slate or whatever here and there, but it's going to be a much more balanced schedule, basically starting this Saturday.
Yeah, we'll be busier, but honestly, I don't mind doing 5-6 shows that are like 5 to 9 games rather than 3 shows that are 12 to 14 games. Yeah, so we probably should get into this slate since we do have 12 games to talk about. I believe this first one is the only there's a couple 5.5s on the board, but New York Islanders with a 2.8 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 2.8 as well. Bruins still missing McAvoy, I believe. Yeah. Boston running Pasternak, Geeky, Zaka, Marchand, Lindholm, Coyle. Noah Dobson back for the Islanders. He will be on the second power play unit. Not that it matters. The Islanders' power play is more anemic than someone who doesn't take iron. They're going Horvat, Lee, Duclair, Nelson, Palmieri, Holmstrom. I'm out on the Palmieri, Nelson, Holmstrom line. In a really small sample, they've been fine, but generally Palmieri and Nelson without Siplikov have been pretty bad. And their 15,200 is just on a 12-game slate. I'm not playing the Islanders second line on the road on a 12-game slate. The top line, I'm more likely to get to an MME. I'm not running out to play them. In a 70-minute sample, they've been fine. 16,000, 2.4% top two stack, 2.2% projected ownership. I feel like if you're 20 maxing or more, you maybe get to a little bit there just because they're fully correlated and Boston is without their top two defensemen. So other than that, like I'm not running out to play the Islanders here. There are so many other spots in that price range that I will consider. So Islanders won in MME, but that's really about it. On the Boston side, it's a little bit more interesting. That I'll start with the second line. Like they're coming in at 5.1% projected at 14,800. They haven't been great. It's just like the Islanders just aren't a very good team. There's no Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde goalie more than Sorokin this year. He just does not have average games. He either has great games or he's getting absolutely demolished. And it's just kind of like what Sorokin is showing up here tonight. I don't want to stack that second line. Yeah, they're 14-8. So if like you need a line in that price range in MME, fine. But like I'm not doing anything with Boston without Pastrnak. And I don't really want to stack that top line at 19,800. 455-minute sample, 2.7 expected goals per 60. It's gotten better because Pastrnak has been white hot leading up to the Four Nations and it's kind of continued after. I don't know if I want to full stack that line. I think if anything, you do two-man Zacha and Pastrnak or just the Pastrnak one-off just because the Islanders penalty kill sucks. They don't take a lot of penalties. Not that the Boston power play is anything to write home about, but in single entry, I'm fine with the Pastrnak one-off. At worst, Zacha, Pastrnak two-man, but that's really about it from this game.
I will say, like, I don't particularly like the Islanders. Like, playing the Islanders on the road on a 12-game slate with no Matt Barzal, where they have a total that's been going down through the day, that's not something that I'm generally interested in doing. But, the Bruins without Lindholm, without McAvoy, those guys are going to be gone for a while. So we don't even really have to bring that up anymore. It takes a lot of defensive ability out of their lineup. They almost won the other night against the Leafs. The Leafs came back and piled up 5 goals on them. Like, this is not a good defensive team at all. And that Islanders top line, say what we will about the power play, it's not good. At least they're perfectly correlated. That's still worth something. Like, perfect correlation is better than no power play time or whatever. Horvat will play 20 minutes. Anders Lee will play like 18 and change or whatever. They'll still get good ice time. They're perfectly correlated. They're only 16K and they're playing a bad defensive team. Like, I do think there are reasons to play the Islanders. Like, single entry, I'll tell you right now, I'm not playing either line in a single entry for me here tonight. Like, 20 max or above, I think you probably should at least consider the top line. Like, again, this isn't a good Bruins team defensively at 5-on-5 or on the penalty kill. So at 16K, if this line was like 18-7 or something like that, I'd be like, yeah, easy pass. At 16K, I do think you have to consider them a little bit if you're playing a bunch of lineups. My interest is more on the Boston side, but I think like you, I'm more interested in like a Pastrnak one-off, Pastrnak and Geeky, like two-man. One thing that should be noted is Boston's basically just playing their top 6, and that's all. Like, they're over the last like 10 games or whatever, everybody in the top 6 is playing like 18 to 22 minutes. Then everybody in the bottom 6 is like playing like under 14. So even guys like Geeky and Charlie Coyle or whatever are going to play 18 to 20 minutes. So if you want to do like a Pastrnak Geeky two-man or something like that, I think that's fine. But neither of these teams are near the top of the priority list for me in a single entry.
Yep, I agree there. The People's main event. We have back-to-back People's main event, actually. Here's part 1. San Jose Sharks with a 2.5 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 3.5 total. These are 2 of the worst defensive teams in the league. These are 2 of the worst penalty kills in the league. So congrats on the 1-0 win in a shootout for one of these teams, but I do like both sides here. Montreal going Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Line A, Newhook, Owen Beck, Gallagher, Dvorak, Anderson, Kirby Doc still out. The only real line of interest for the Sharks is Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund. I will mention Smith, Zetterlund, Wenberg, just because they're 12-7. And they are a filler line that you can use in MME. But really, on the Sharks side, it's the only line of interest to me is that top line. Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund. They are 17,700, which has come up. And they do have a 2.5 road total, which kind of sucks. But it's kind of that situation where, like, if they score 3 goals here tonight, chances are this top line is going to be heavily involved. So it's 17,700. I'm okay with it. 160-minute sample, basically 3 expected goals, 4 per 60, 3.7 actual. They have been very good since they've been put together. There's no matchup on the Montreal side that worries me at all. It's a very, very good power play matchup. And as long as Celebrini and Wallman and Toffoli are on the power play, it's generally a pretty good power play. So I do really like the Sharks top line here at 17-7. At the same time, I do like the Montreal top line here. They are 18-2. They've come up 2,400. Now, obviously, it's dynamic pricing, and it is a much better matchup with a much higher total, but they have been rolling out of the break here. I think the 2 weeks off have done Caulfield and Slavkovsky specifically really well. He had that banged up shoulder. I'm sure those 2 weeks off definitely helped him. The only issue that I have with Montreal 1 is this. It is an excellent power play matchup. And if you're going to play Montreal for the power play, I want Line in there. I don't know who I want to leave off, though. So I think in a situation like this, I may just straight up full 5-man power play stack the Canadiens here tonight, which is utterly ridiculous coming out of my mouth on a 12-game slate. But, like, it's something that I am going to consider. The top line, 6.5% projected ownership. That Line A line, like Line A may see 5, 6, 7, 8%, something like that. But, like, it's fine. And his price isn't overly prohibitive at 5,100. And Lane Hudson is 4,700. So it's definitely feasible to full power play stack here. I'm fine with straight up just Montreal 1. I'm fine with like a Line A Hudson 2-man. But like I'm going to find a way to get in more power play guys. Like Line A Hudson's fine, but I'll probably add in the Suzuki. You know what I mean? So it's some sort of Montreal power play stack. And I do like San Jose 1.
Yeah. One thing I will say is like, if there's definitely no matchup concerns for San Jose going into Montreal. There's also no concerns for Montreal with San Jose coming in. You know what I mean? The top line, 3.8 goals against. The second line has been better. Zetterlund and Smith, only 2.1 actual goals against when they're on the ice, but 3.5 expected goals against. So tip your cap to Mackenzie Blackwood, Askarov, and Georgiev in net tonight. So, you know, as long as the Golding doesn't stand up, it is a great matchup for Montreal. It's why they have a 3.5, right? Like before the break, there were games where Montreal had like a 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 road total. Now it's 3.5 at home against the Sharks. I agree with you. I would definitely want the power play guys. I was looking earlier. The San Jose Sharks have given up the most power play goals against per game over the last 10 weeks. I thought it might be like Minnesota, maybe Calgary. No, it's San Jose. So yeah, it is a great power play matchup. Because it is a great power play matchup, I think Line A is the one guy that you should probably put in. And then build around that. Like you said, if you want to do like Suzuki, Line A, Hudson, or just Suzuki and Line A, or 5-man power play stack, like those types of things, I think that's what I would do. Can I just say, Josh Anderson playing tonight feels like a miracle. I don't know, for anybody that didn't see the game on Tuesday, I don't know if he got tripped or his skate got caught, but he was racing behind the net and went kind of like this, like right into the boards, full speed. It's
like
one of those things where, like,
into a brick wall.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, if it's somebody going in feet first, that's a snapped ankle or a broken femur, or head first, it's a broken neck. And somehow he kept his head up and he's playing 2 days later. It's like a miracle. I do wonder how healthy he is besides that, but yeah, anyways, Montreal, definitely the power play guys. I will say, my one concern for the Habs is something we brought up on Tuesday, and it kind of came to fruition in that game. Now, they won 4-0, and they're comfortably in the lead the entire time. But we mentioned how when the lineup is healthy, they do like to spread around the ice time. And that's what they did the other night. Nick Suzuki had 17 minutes and 20 seconds. And Joel Armia was the only other forward with over 17 minutes. He had 17:01. So they're going to spread around the ice time, especially with a bad team like the Sharks in town. As long as they're not down like 2-0 after the first or something, Montreal is going to spread around the ice time. And that concerns me. You know, is Slafkovsky playing 15 minutes, Caulfield 16, Suzuki 17, while Heineman and Jake Evans play like 15 minutes. You know what I mean? I think that's a genuine concern here, but it is still a great matchup for the Habs. I'm going to be honest. I really do like the San Jose side here. One, I don't have the ice time concerns there. Eklund at minimum is going to play 19 minutes. Celebrini is going to be over 20. Toffoli will probably be like Toffoli at around 17 minutes might play more than anybody on the Montreal top line. They've been great together, as you mentioned. 3.7 actual goals per 60 minutes, 2.8 expected goals. Toffoli's over 3 shots per game in his last 10 games. They're perfectly correlated on the power play. The power play has been good even without Michael Granlund there. Montreal still taking a fair number of penalties, not as much as they were, but still a fair amount. With a cheaper price and more ice time, like, I'm kind of tempted to go with San Jose 1 here. So I think you really do have to consider the Sharks. But overall, like, yes, the Montreal top line here, they have the higher top 2 percentage. They're only $500 more expensive, so they're, quote, the better play. Honestly, for less ownership at a slightly lower price, I think you really do have to consider San Jose 1 here.
Yeah, for sure. I do really like San Jose. 17-7 is kind of like a bit iffy, but you know you're going to get the minutes. Let's get to part 2 of the People's main event. Our Columbus Blue Jackets with a 2.7 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 3.3 total. Detroit going Larkin, Raymond, Casper, DeBrincat, Kane, Confer. I'll mention their third line because they're getting 3% projected ownership. Joe Veleno, Vladimir Tarasenko, Elmer Soderblom. Holy shit. I watched the Detroit game for the first time in a little bit. Elmer Soderblom is a giant. He is 6'8". So, like, on skates, he's like 9'7". And it's ridiculous watching him skate. But, woo, he's a big boy. Anyway, Columbus going Fantilli, Voronkov, Marchenko, Kent Johnson, Boone Jenner, Cole Sillinger. Yeah. Man, like, since Casper got up on that top line with Larkin and Raymond, with the new coach, they have been nitrous. 3.4 expected goals, 4 per 60, 2.9 actual. But not only that, you get Larkin and Raymond on the power play. And since Todd McClellan took over, that power play is just ridiculous. Like, they're head and shoulders above the next power play per power play goals in the past. I think it's like 4 or 5, 6 weeks, something like that. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, going back to Christmas, they're scoring 1.17 power play goals per game. No other team is above 0.75. So they're scoring like 52% more power play goals per game than the next best team for the last 2 months.
Yeah, it's insane. And this is a really good power play spot. And it's Daniil Tarasov in net. And the top line of Fantilli, Voronkov, Marchenko, very good offensively, very bad defensively. So not only is it a good power play spot, it is a good 5-on-5 matchup. They are 19,300, which is kind of a tough pill to swallow. Like stacking a line with Marco Kasper for 19,300 is kind of a scene. But Larkin and Raymond are going to play heavy minutes. Kasper's minutes have been creeping up. I like them at 19,300, 4.2% projected ownership. Now, if you want to go to the second line, it's kind of weird because they're 17,500, right? You do get DeBrincat and Kane on the power play. But it's a JT Confer line, and I can spend $200 more for a Macklin Celebrini line who's going to play more minutes. You know what I mean? So at that point, I'm just going to Detroit 1. If you want to make it a power play stack and leave off Kasper and add in Kane or DeBrincat, now you're looking at like 21K, which is kind of crazy. I don't mind it from the fact that Detroit's power play is absolutely ridiculous. So from that standpoint, it's fine. I think for me, I'm just going to stick to stacking Detroit 1. I think a one-off DeBrincat's fine. A one-off Kane is fine as well. It's just power play stacking Montreal compared to power play stacking Detroit. Obviously, I'd rather power play stack Detroit. It's just almost impossible because it's so much more expensive. So, focusing on the power play guys is fine, but if you leave off Kasper and add in someone else, you're looking at 21K, and that's just too expensive for me. So, for me, Detroit one off DeBrincat, one off Kane. On the Columbus side, the Columbus top line is the same price as the Detroit top line. It's just I'd rather play Detroit, obviously. So, if I was 150 maxing, I'd obviously have one or two Columbus ones just because they are fully correlated. Marchenko, they've been so good, even without Monahan. So, I probably have a little bit in MME. That's second line at 14-4. They haven't been great in their 3 games, but Boone Jenner is just coming back from an injury at 14-4 in MME. I guess it's fine as a filler, but really the only true line of interest to me is Detroit 1.
Yeah. My bad for doubting our Columbus Blue Jackets against Dallas the other night. I said didn't really have interest in them, and then they piled on 6 goals. Those things will happen. The one thing that stuck out to me about that game, I wrote about this elsewhere. Adam Fantilli played 15 minutes and 39 seconds in that game. It was his lowest ice time since Sean Monahan got hurt on January 9th. And that's the impact of Boone Jenner coming back.
Especially at home because they take top comp.
In the 2 games since Jenner came back, none of their forwards have averaged over 18 minutes. Only 3 are over 17 minutes, and 2 of them are Jenner and Sillinger. Adam Fantilli under 16 minutes. Voronkov just over 16 minutes. Marchenko at 17, 15 or something like that. So now one of those games was they beat the piss out of Chicago. So obviously they weren't going to give their top guys a ton of ice time then. But the other game was Dallas, a cup contender, and it was 2-1 after the first period and 3-2 after the second period. So that was a close game against a cup contender, and Adam Fantilli still only played 15 and a half minutes. I do have concerns about how much ice time they're going to get. Now, if they were priced like Montreal, if they were priced a little lower, like we talked about the Islanders earlier at 16K, if they were that, then I would have a lot of interest. At 19,300, I'd honestly, if they're not going to play a ton of minutes, I'll just go play Montreal instead. That's just kind of the way that I look at it. So I don't know. I hate to say it, but I just don't have a ton of interest in Columbus here because of the price. Like I said, I'd rather save the money and go play Montreal, save the money and go play Utah, save some money. And, we'll talk about even Buffalo. If Adam Fantilli is only going to play 15 to 16 minutes, I'm not paying $19,300 for his line. That's just kind of the way it is. So out on Columbus, in on Detroit. Detroit won. Marco Kasper, he has a high prospect pedigree. He is supposed to be like a top line forward. This quickly, that's a good question, but he had really good defensive numbers even under the old coach. And obviously, since he's been put on the top line, they've been great. He's got 9 points in his last 10 games, and all those points are at even strength. So he hasn't needed the power play time. Kane missed a few games or whatever it was, like, to get there. He's been doing it at even strength just fine. So I'm with you. I'm kind of fine just stacking Detroit one. I'd rather play Detroit than Columbus. I get that Columbus is coming in with almost no ownership, so you do have to factor that in. But it's not like Detroit's coming in at like 11% or whatever. Like you said, 4.2% on the top line. If they come in at 5, 6, 7% in a single entry, that's perfectly fine to me. Their power play is great. Lots of ice time. Good power play spot. For me, this is a Detroit one game. If you want to take out Casper, put in one of Kane or DeBrincat or something like that, I think go ahead. But with Casper playing 18 minutes, give or take, and with how good he's been on the top line, I have no problem playing him.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Gonna need a bigger boat. Calgary Flames with a 2.5 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning have a 3.5. Tampa going Kucherov, Gensel. Well, they're going 11-7. But they're going Kucherov, Gensel, Point, and then Cirelli and Hagel will be together. And then everyone else will just kind of rotate.
Hold on. I was surprised the other night. Zemgus Girgensons played almost every single shift next to Hagel and Cirelli in that game.
Where's Whiskers when you need him?
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, Girgensons played like 17 minutes or something like that. I couldn't believe it. But, I mean, I wouldn't expect that to last. I just found that kind of interesting for that one game.
Zegmus. Buffalo Sabres legend. Zegmus. I'll start on the Calgary side. They're going Kadri, Huberdeau, Coronado, Coleman, Backlund, Zari, Sharon Govich, Farabee, Frost. Now, since they've put these new lines together, they've all been pretty much trash. It's true. Kadri, Huberdeau, Coronado, not creating anything, not shooting a high percentage. I'm out on them. They've been pretty bad defensively as well. Zari, Backlund, Coleman, they're creating a fair bit. They're not finishing. That's actually status quo for Backlund Coleman line. They're just not great defensively. Either was Zari there. Frost, Farabee, Sharon Govich, just not creating or scoring anything. So if anything, it would be like Backlund Coleman. I guess an MME is fine, but for the most part, I'm out on Calgary here. Tampa is very interesting here tonight for a couple reasons. One, like I just mentioned, these top two Calgary lines really are not great defensively. And two, their penalty kill sucks. So, Kucherov, Gensel, Point is 22,300, 25.1% top two stack, 11.1% projected ownership. But there was a time not too long ago where they were $4,500 more expensive. So I think they're in play here. Now, if you want to save a couple bucks, it would only be $400. You could take off Gensel and put in Hagel. Like, if you need the 400, I think that's fine. But I think Tampa 1 here is fine. 22,300 is a bit expensive with the dynamic pricing for my taste. And I'd rather save the 3,000 and just go play Detroit. But, this is a very good spot at 5-on-5 and power play for Tampa 1 here. Tampa 2, you can do whatever you want with Girgensons. But Hagel and Cirelli, long, huge sample of being super much wow good this season. So I'm fine with the 2-mana Hagel, Cirelli. Hagel's on the top power play unit now, so I'm good with that. We were talking a little bit before the show about these players coming back from Four Nations, and a lot of them have struggled. Cirelli didn't play heavy minutes, but he did play. Points he hasn't had a great game, but I'm fine with Tampa 1 here. I'm fine with the Hagel Cirelli 2-man, pretty much out on Calgary.
I'm going to be somewhat quick. I'm pretty much out on this game entirely. I don't really have any interest in the Flames here. I don't really know why that they keep screwing with the top line. The top line had been playing pretty well, or I guess all the lines. So until they get back to some lines that were actually creating something, I'm out on them. And Tampa won. Their price went up compared to the other night when they were playing Edmonton. All things equal, this is a worse matchup. You know what I mean? Just because of the disparity in goaltending between Edmonton and Dustin Wolf. So in a, quote, worse matchup for goal scoring, their price increased. That, like, I was kind of shaky on playing Tampa on Tuesday, and I didn't. With the price increase, I have no interest against Dustin Wolf. It's one of those nights, like, if that line goes off and lights up Dustin Wolf for a terrible game, so be it. I'm going to put my belief in the goaltender that has been a great prospect for years and is having a great season. So I'm just out on this game.
That's fair. Like, with dynamic pricing, 22,300 is essentially 26,800.
Well, I just mean it, and it's not a big price increase. I think it's only $400 from the game against Edmonton, but factoring in goaltending, this is a worse matchup, and and the price went up. So, like, I'm out.
Yeah, it's not Danny V. It's Dustin W. Let's move on. Holy moly, we don't need that screenshot. I got a huge melon enough. Edmonton Oilers, 3.0 total. Heading into Florida, the Panthers have a 3.5 total. This game had some weird line movement, opened at 3.5, got absolutely nuked down to 6. Wait, it opened at 6.5, got nuked down to 6. Now it's back up to 6.5. The Florida total has been yo-yoed. Now they're up to 3.5. It's gone up half a goal. That's always interesting. I don't put tremendous stock into line movement, but like half a goal is a ginormous move.
The one thing I've found it interesting, I've found it useful for is ownership. Like, if a team's total goes from 3 to 3.5, I suspect that, I'll let you talk about like which lines and all that, but I suspect that Florida's top line at 13% projected ownership is going to be higher than that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. And I just, like, we've talked about this line ad nauseum about how they're dumping and chasing a lot. They haven't been creating a ton. They're up to 225 minutes. It's kind of been the same pattern. Now, Edmonton's looked like absolute crap since the Four Nations break. They keep flip-flopping their lines. Now it's McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins on top, Draisaitl, Arvidsson, Skinner. So it's just like, I don't really want to play chalk Florida here, especially if they're coming in north of 15%. Like, if their expected goals were really high and their actual goals were low, I'd be like, it's a shooting percentage thing. It's going to turn around. They're not creating a bunch here, and yeah, maybe it's going to improve a little bit, but like, I'm not going to pay $20,000 to find out when I can just go play Detroit, who's going to fuck around and find out against Columbus. You know what I mean? So, like, they're fine if you want to play them. Like, you can say, hey, Josh, I got a lineup. I really like a Florida 1. I say, cool. Like, that's fine. Because Edmonton's looked like shit. So, like, it's fine. It's just, like, for me, in a single entry, I'm just going to go play somewhere else. Bennett, Rodriguez, Samoskevich at 14K, 12% projected. Like, I like that line. In their small sample, they have been very, very good. Like, Samoskevich and Bennett have played excellent together. It's just like, do I want to play a filler line for double digits on this slate? Probably not. I don't have a ton of, like, if you want to one-off Bennett or one-off Samoskevich or two-man them, like, fine. Because, like, to me, ownership doesn't matter. There's so many ways to get different. But, like, there's a difference between playing, like, a 13% top line that's rolling and a 12% filler line. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of mum on Florida here. The Edmonton side, like, there's no ownership there. But the problem is, like, these lines aren't going to stick. They changed their lines more than I changed my socks. McDavid hasn't looked great since his workload is insane. Like, he won the gold medal with Canada on a Thursday night. They had a Saturday afternoon game. It was a back-to-back. Then they played Tuesday. Now they're playing Thursday, going into the Stanley Cup champions and Barkov. Like, if you want to play Edmonton because they're low-owned, and we always say low-owned McDavid, things of nightmares. The workload he's had is just kind of insane. And it's all been on the road, by the way. So, like, if you want to play them for an ownership play in MME, be my guest, but I'm probably out for the most part on this game in single entry, and it's kind of a horrifying statement, to be honest.
Yeah. This is what I'll say about Edmonton is that for whatever issues they have, they've still had a really good power play. I should say really good power play, but 2 power play goals in 3 games since coming back. The power play has been really good since Hyman returned in early December. So, like, we're looking at nearly 3 months now. Like, I'm talking like top of the league type stuff. Florida's power play has struggled relative to what we usually expect from them, like middle of the league over the last 10 weeks. It's not a terrible power play matchup, and it's the low ownership thing, right? Like, think about McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins is under 20K. They're only $600 more expensive than that Columbus top line, right? At relatively even prices, would you rather play Fantilli, Voronkov, Marchenko, or would you rather play McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins? Like, that's just kind of regardless of matchup, I really don't care. But that's why I'm considering Edmonton here, is because there's really not a lot in the expensive range that I want to play. I don't want to play Tampa. I don't want to play Columbus. I think Detroit is fine. I don't want to play Boston. There are a few other spots in that price range that we'll get to later that I also don't want to play. So, like, it's basically the top lines on both sides of this game, plus Detroit, that I really have interest in that over 19K range. All things equal, then I'll just go play Florida. All that ownership does kind of scare me, but the Florida power play is still fine. Edmonton's goaltending is just abysmal. They've looked like that McDavid especially has looked really bad since coming back from the Four Nations. I think they just need to get this road trip over with and get back home and get some rest. For all the problems that Florida's top line has had scoring, they're controlling the play really well. Like I said on Tuesday, like, eventually this line is going to break through for a big game. They're not my favorite expensive line, Florida's top line, amongst those 19K plus lines. They're also not my least favorite. Like, I would rather play Florida than Boston. I'd rather play Florida than Tampa Bay. I'd rather play Florida than Columbus. So even at 15% ownership or whatever. But they're not my favorite line in that price range. So I think I'm kind of with you that I don't have a ton of interest in this game for single entry. If I was 20 maxing, I would be giving Edmonton a real hard look here tonight, because that top line is perfectly correlated at under 20K. And if you have a perfectly correlated Connor McDavid line under 20K coming in at like 1% to 2%, I think you really have to give them a close look if you're playing a bunch of lineups.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. It's just like, I think McDavid needs a nap. Did you see the picture of him walking into the arena? It looks like someone just told him that someone tased his grandma. It's like, you need some sleep there, homie. St. Louis Blues with a 2.5 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 3.1. This game. If you didn't know, if you scroll through Twitter and you follow some beat writers list, Ovechkin hasn't scored a goal on Joel Hofer. It was like an hour of scrolling through Joel Hofer tweets. It's like, what are we doing with our lives here? But Ovechkin hasn't scored against Hofer. Ovechkin, Strome, Protas, Wilson, Dubois, McMichael, Mangiapane, Eller, Frank, Kyrou, Holloway, Shen, Thomas, Buchnevich, Neighbors. Now, I played Joey Decord on Tuesday, and the Blues just absolutely wiped him off the face of the earth. wasn't Decord's fault. It was Seattle just playing like a bag of ass. But like, I don't have a ton of interest in St. Louis here. I will say like Shen, Holloway, Kyrou at 14-8, fully correlated against that Strome line is a little interesting because Strome and Ovechkin have never been good defensively together. Protas helps, but not too much. 3.1 expected goals against per 60 in a 215-minute sample. So Kyrou, Holloway, Shen. Another thing, it's Charlie Lindgren, not Logan Thompson, which makes a humongous big difference. Thompson's arguably the best goalie in the NHL, not named Hellebuck this season. And Charlie Lindgren has been a fine backup, but nowhere near Logan Thompson. So for that reason, I don't mind Kyrou, Holloway, Shen at 14-8. But like, I'm not running out to play the Blues here tonight in single entry. I'm not particularly looking to run out and play the Capitals either. Like, if you want to play Wilson, Dubois, McMichael at 15K, fine. Like, I'm not going to spend 18-3 on Ovechkin, Strome, Protas here. Like, I'd rather spend up for Detroit. I'd rather spend down for the San Jose. I'd rather spend down for Montreal. It's just a question of, like, if Washington's winning, how many empty net goals is Ovechkin going to score here tonight? So, like, I don't mind either side in MME. I don't think I'm just going to prioritize anything in single entry.
So one of the reasons why I do have a fair bit of interest in Washington here tonight is that St. Louis penalty kill. It is terrible. It is the worst in the league. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. Over the last 10 weeks, they're dead last by penalty kill percentage at 64%. I didn't even know that was possible. It's been a little bit better over the last 5 weeks of NHL scheduling, but still under 70%. Like, this is a horrific penalty kill. And the Washington power play is not great, but it's fine. And it's certainly good enough to go 1 for 3 or even 1 for 2 or whatever against this god-awful PK. They get one. They donk one at 5-on-5. Ovechkin gets his customary empty net goal. All of a sudden, they have a big night. So it's kind of why I have some interest in Washington 1 here is that it's a really good power play matchup. The other thing is Ovechkin might not even go out against the second line. Like, they've been using him against like third and fourth lines quite a bit when they're at home. Like, they're doing everything they can to keep him away from NHL caliber talent. To try to get him that goals record. And, that line hasn't necessarily been great, but, 3 goals per 60 minutes since Christmas for Ovechkin and Protas skating together, which is down from earlier in the year, but still pretty good. Protas has 24 shots in his last 10 games, so he's getting shots on goal even off the power play. So, I honestly don't mind Washington 1 here tonight. If you want to take out Protas and put in Wilson or something for additional power play exposure, I think that's fine because the second line's generally been okay anyway. And the other is, again, this is a great power play matchup for the Caps. So I do have some interest in Washington here. Like, this is a really, really good power play matchup for them. St. Louis goaltending has been very hit or miss this year, and there's no ownership coming in on the Caps. Like 2.5% on that Washington top line, 1.7% on the Washington second line. So both lines combined under 5%, and this has been the highest scoring team in the NHL this season. You know what I mean? So, like, I do think there should be some interest in the Caps here. Again, strictly because of how good of a power play spot it is. I'd really focus on the 4 power play guys. If you want to just play the top line, no issue with that. But power play, especially on the St. Louis side, I really don't have a lot of interest here. I agree. It would be Kyrou, Holloway, and Shen, especially because there's not a lot of great lines under 15K here tonight. They're not going to play much against the Dubois line, which is the big matchup that you want to miss. But All things being equal, I'd way rather play the Washington side here, and I'd focus on the power play guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, if the Blues took a lot more penalties, it would be an absolute circus. But, like, they at least don't take a ton. But if they do, they can't kill them.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Is like they can't kill off even taking like a bottom 5 rate of penalties per game over the last 10 weeks. They're giving up the second most power play goals per game because their penalty kill is so bad. So like Washington could easily go 1 for 1 or 1 for 2 here tonight.
Yeah, no, I agree. Buffalo Sabres, the skinny swords with a 2.7 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes, 3.7 total, one of the biggest totals on the board here tonight. I think the biggest besides Vegas. Let's talk about it. Carolina going Rantanen, Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook, Hall, Blake, and Yost. Buffalo going Thompson, Peterka, Kulich, Tuck, Zucker is a game time decision, and McLeod, Cousins, Quinn, Greenway. Now, going into Carolina isn't as bad as it once was. However, Martinook, Stahl, Jarvis, still very, very good. It kind of takes me out on that Kulich, Peterka, Thompson line. They have been very, very good offensively, very, very bad defensively. And if you're going to be very, very bad defensively against a Stahl line, you're probably going to be in trouble. So I am out on Buffalo 1 here. We'll have to see if Zucker's in. Like, even like that line just hasn't been great anyway, and it's 15,900. It's kind of priced into a spot where I don't really want to play them anyway. I don't really want to play the third line either, but they're 11,800. And if Zucker's out, either Cousins or Peterka move to that top power play. Not that it's a good power play spot at all. Carolina still has an elite penalty kill, but it's something. So, like, I don't mind Cousins, Quinn, Greenway at 11.8 just from a price standpoint, but really my interest is on the Carolina side here. And there's 2 lines of note here. The one, and they're $7,000 apart. Jarvis, Stahl, and Martinook is $14,000 with a 2.2% projected ownership. Now, I alluded to how bad that Thompson line has been defensively. In a 100-minute sample, 3.6 expected goals against per 60, 4.2 actual. And that Stahl line has been great all year, 3.1 expected goals per 60 in a 225-minute sample. You get Jarvis on the top power play unit. Buffalo is absolutely terrible defensively. Their goalies haven't been great. I do really like Jarvis, Stahl, Martinook here at 14,000. They're a filler line under 15,000 that I would definitely consider. Now, the top line is where things get real interesting because a lot of people are down on Mikko Rantanen with Aho and Svechnikov. Mikko Rantanen's underlying numbers since he got to Carolina have been excellent. This is kind of one of those things where it's like, I kind of want to get in before the dam bursts, right? They're coming in at 4.6%. I'd rather play them than Tampa. I think I'd rather play them than Florida. It's just like, do you want to spend $21,000 for a line here tonight? But this is the matchup to do it. They have a 3.7 total. They're coming in under half the projected ownership of Florida. Mikko Rantanen is shooting 4% since he got there. The line as a whole since he's gotten there is shooting 7%. He leads the team in expected goals for percentage since he's got there. He's gonna break through, and at 4.6% in this matchup, it's kind of like I want to get in before the stock explodes, right? I want to get in before the news leaks. So if I of the expensive lines, I'm going to consider Carolina 1 here just because of the ownership, and I want to get in before the big game is coming because it's coming. I just don't know when it's coming.
Yeah, to your point, there are 3 lines projected for at least 14% ownership, or 14% top 2 stack, sorry. Tampa, Florida, Carolina. 11% for Tampa, 13% ownership for Florida, under 5% for Carolina. Like, that matters. The question is, when is the dam going to burst? But, like, Buffalo's not a good defensive team. They're defense, not good defensively. None of the lines are, the penalty kill below, not awful, but below average. That Carolina top line is perfectly correlated. Rantanen's averaging over 20 minutes. Aho's around 21. Svechnikov won't play as much, but he'll still get like 17, 18 minutes or whatever, and that's just fine. I'm with you. I'd rather play them than Tampa. I would rather play them than Florida. I'd rather play them than Boston, certainly. I'd rather play them than Columbus. For me, it's like Detroit, maybe Edmonton, but I think Edmonton would be more like a 20 max or MME thing. So like I think amongst the expensive lines, this is number 2 for me, factoring in ownership and price and all that. The question is the dam going to burst, or are they going to trade him again before that happens? Because that's apparently the rumor. But it's a great spot. Great 5-on-5 matchup. Great power play matchup. Aho and Rantanen, 3.3 expected goals per 60, shooting 8% when they're on the ice. They move Shane Gostisbehere back to the top power play unit mercifully. And the power play, like the Carolina power play, shooting 0% since Rantanen got there. Like obviously all these things are going to get better as long as they don't trade him. It's just a matter of when, but it's a great spot for Carolina. What I'll mention on the Buffalo side is that third line of Cousins, Quinn, and Greenway. Over the last 2 seasons, Greenway and Cousins have played 265 minutes together and been league average offensively at 5-on-5. Now, that's not great, but for a third line that is priced as a filler, 11,800, league average is pretty good. And, Quinn's on the top power play. Again, like you mentioned, not a good power play spot, but power play minutes are still better than none. If Zucker's out, maybe Cousins gets top power play minutes. Maybe even Greenway does. I don't mind that Buffalo third line if you're looking for a filler. Like if you're playing Detroit or Edmonton or Florida or something, you need a sub 12K line. I think this is one to consider, but I really prefer the Carolina side, and Carolina 1 is one of the lines I'm really considering using tonight.
Yep. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.9 total heading into Pittsburgh. The Penguins have a 3 total. This is a rematch, home and home of Tuesday. The Noah Cates line had a 33% Corsi for percentage on Tuesday. 5 shots for, 10 against. They scored on 4 of the 5 shots. That is the definition of sun running. If that happens again, you'll find me at the bottom of the Hudson. Nah, that's too far of a drive, but you know what I mean. But I just don't have interest in that line at 13.5. They generally have not been good since they were good for like a month, and then they've fallen off a cliff. The one line on the Flyer side that I would have a little bit interest in is Tippett, Michkov, Couturier, because they're going to avoid the Crosby line. Not that the Crosby line is anything to fear, but once you get past them, it's just a who's who of who. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't mind them. The problem is they're 15,500. At that point, like I'd rather just save the 1,500 and go play the stall line. But like I don't mind them from a matchup standpoint. Like I have no interest in Konechny, Kuzmenko, and Lawton at 18,400. Kuzmenko's price has gone up since Tuesday, and he did fuck all on Tuesday. So I don't know. On the Pittsburgh side, Crosby, Raquel, Rust at 20,300. Like early in the year, we had minutes concerns. Maybe they play, 17, 18 minutes. Generally, they've been around 19, 20 of late. It's just Philly's generally a decent defensive team. They don't have a good penalty kill, but Pittsburgh's power play without Grzelcyk is atrocious. So at that point, like I don't have a ton of interest. I'll just spend the extra 700 to go play Carolina 1 or save the 600 or whatever, or save the 1,000 and go play Detroit. So like I have Carolina and Detroit above them. After that, I'm not really sure what the other lines are, but so really the only line of note for me is Tippett, Michkov, Couturier, and in single entry, I'm probably not playing them because of the price, but it's a decent matchup.
Yeah, I'll start on the Philly side. It's basically by process of elimination that I agree with you on Tippett, Michkov. and Couturier, because one, like it feels like Forster Cates, they're not going to have a night like that again. Like you said, 4 goals on 5 shots, 10 points between them. I think Brink had as many points on Tuesday night as he had in his prior 20 games. So like, I don't think we're going to be getting that. I am certainly not playing an $18,400 Scott Laughton, Andrei Kuzmenko line on the road. I don't care what matchup it is. That is just insane. Like, honestly, Konechny, Kuzmenko, Laughton is more expensive than Celebrini to Foley Eklund. Excuse me? Like, and no one can tell me that this is a better matchup than San Jose going into Montreal. So no. So yeah, by basically, like I said, by process of elimination, Tippett, Michkov, Couturier, that line hasn't played a ton together, but they've been really good. 61 shot attempts, 3.3 expected goals. It's only 45 minutes, which is like 4 games worth. So, nothing to get too excited about. But they have been solid. There isn't a ton in that 14 to 16K range that I really want to play. The matchup is good. So I think Tippett, Michkov, Couturier is just fine. On the Pittsburgh side, I'm out on Pittsburgh 1. I don't have an issue with people that want to play them, but if I'm going up over 20K, like you said, I'd rather play Carolina. I'd rather play Florida. Honestly, I'd probably give some consideration to Edmonton, so I'm out on Pittsburgh 1. The only line on the Pittsburgh side, and I'll mention it again, is Hayes, Tomasino, Heinen, that third line. It's because they're 10,700. Hayes and Tomasino have been excellent together this year. Tomasino, I wrote about him the other last week for Elite Prospects. He's just been really good with Pittsburgh. It's not having a monster season, but if you extrapolate his numbers with the Penguins, he would probably have like a 20-goal, 40-point season, which is pretty good for playing 14 minutes or whatever he's been getting. So don't mind like a 2-man of like Hayes, Tomasino or something like that if he needs fit in expensive players elsewhere. But other than that, I guess it's the Couturier line, but don't love it.
Yeah. Winnipeg Jets with a 3.2 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 2.8. This is back-to-back on the road for Winnipeg, so it will be Eric Comrie in net. They're going Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, Ehlers, Perfidi, Nemestikov, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton. Yossi's out for Nashville. They said Saros is a game-time decision, so it could be Justice and Nguyen, but we will see. Nashville going Forsberg, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Nyquist, Svechkov, Novak, Evangelista, Bellows. On the Nashville 1 front, I am out on them. 1, they've been awful together. 2, they're coming in at basically 10% projected. Forsberg and Marchessault just haven't played good at either end of the ice together this season. I'm out on them. The second line is interesting from the standpoint they're only 12-8. And you get Stamkos on the top power play unit, and Nyquist and Svechkov. Like, Svechkov's been pretty good this season.
And I'm pretty sure Nyquist is going to be on the top power play unit. I think they're going to try out a 5 forward rather than move up Brady Shea. Yeah.
So you do get 2 guys there. Small sample, they've been pretty good. I don't mind them at 12-8. You can get at the Jets on the penalty kill, and it is Comrie, who is probably the best backup in the league, but still not anywhere close to Connor Hellebuyck. I don't mind Nashville 2 here. That's really about it. If you need a super cheap 2-man, like, roll the tape of every time they play, I'm fine with Novak Evangelista 2-man, but really it would be Nashville 2. On the Winnipeg side, I think Winnipeg 3 is fine as a filler. I feel like I ran hot with Appleton last night, so like it feels like chasing to me, but at 10,900, it's fine here. The top line's in play for me in MME only, because at 20,900, I'd just spend the $100 for Carolina 1. But they are fully correlated. It is a good power play spot. Yossi's out. It could be a new one in net. So I don't mind Winnipeg 1, but that's more of an MME type deal for me.
Yeah, I agree with you on Winnipeg and MME. And it's just because of other similar lines or similarly priced lines that I'd rather play, like Carolina. I agree. Florida, even Edmonton, Detroit is like is what, $1,600 cheaper. I'd rather play Detroit. So I don't have an issue per se playing Winnipeg, which is why, like, if I was 20 maxing, maybe I have 150, maybe you have like 3 or 4 or 5 or something like that. But I agree with you that it's the third line I would have interest in. Lowry, Appleton, Niederreiter, some sort of 2-man, like Lowry, Niederreiter, Lowry, Appleton, something like that. The Nashville top line is bad defensively. The Nashville everything else is worse. So it's a pretty good matchup for Winnipeg 3 here. They're also generally a pretty good road team or road line when they don't have to take those tough matchups at home. So I think Winnipeg 3, put them in another bucket. We mentioned Pittsburgh earlier, Buffalo earlier, that if you need a filler line, it's one of the, like, a 2-man that you can target. On the Nashville side, the only reason I really have interest in Nashville, 1, Forsberg, Marchessault, O'Reilly. I mean, a couple of reasons. 1, they are perfectly correlated. That does matter. 2, Forsberg and Marchessault, even though they're bad defensively, have been good offensively together. 3.2 goals per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. The others, they're 17,100, right? Forsberg, Marchessault, O'Reilly are $1,300 cheaper than the Scott Laughton, Andrei Kuzmenko line in Philadelphia. So, that's why I have consideration for them, and they're projected at under 10%. Like, the ownership is just fine. I don't see myself playing Nashville here tonight, but it's another one of those, like, if I was 20 maxing, I would really consider at least having one or something. Obviously more lineups, the more you play, but it's just because no Hellebuck and they are so cheap that I do think you have to consider Nashville 1 here tonight.
Yep. Minnesota Wild with a 2.4 total heading into Utah. The Soakers have a 3.2 total. Minnesota going Boldy, Zuccarello, Rossi, Freddie Gaudreau, Vinny Hinostroza, Marcus Johansson. I can't believe that's the second line on an NHL team. Utah going Keller, Cooley, Schmaltz, Genther, Hayton, Carcone, Doan, Krause, McBain. Marc-Andre Fleury for Minnesota here tonight. I was off of Minnesota the night they were chalk. They were like 17% or whatever the other night, or 14%. They're 5% here with a 2.4 total. This is a bad 5-on-5 matchup, but it is a good power play matchup. Like, in single entry, I am not playing the Minnesota Wild. I can tell you that right now. If I was making 20,
man, they're only 18,400. That's Scott Laughton, Andrei Kuzmenko territory.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I would do before playing Andrei Kuzmenko tonight, but we don't have time for that list. Boldy, Zuccarello, Rossi. I guess, like, if you're making 20 to 150, I'd have, like, if I was making 20, maybe I'd have one. If I was making 150, I'd have a handful, just because it's a good power play spot. But other than that, I am out on Minnesota. Utah side's a little bit more interesting. That Minnesota top line is pretty bad defensively. Other than that, they are really good defensively, but it is a really good power play matchup. And Marc-Andre Fleury is one of the worst goalies by PK save percentage on the season. So it's kind of what to do here, because Cooley, Schmaltz, Keller at 17.8 has a really good power play matchup at 2.4% projected. It's also a good 5-on-5 matchup. Cooley's not on the power play. And if you're going to do some power play stuff with Utah, you want Dylan Genther. Now, Genther, Hayton, Carcone have been excellent together at 14.6. The problem is Gaudreau and Marcus Johansson have been a meat grinder all season, so it's a brutal 5-on-5 matchup. So what I think I would do is play Utah 1. If you're going to play Utah, right, it's a really good 5-on-5 matchup. But I would find a way to get Genther into the lineup, because he's the straw that stirs the drink on the power play. So whether you leave off Cooley and adding Genther, go triple wing, leave off Schmaltz and adding Genther, something like that, I'd find a way to get Genther into the lineup.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons you do have to give Minnesota consideration, it's just the ice time thing, right? Like, they all played 21 minutes the other night. They're all probably going to play over 20 minutes again here tonight. They're perfectly correlated on the top line, and they've been good offensively together this year. 2.9 expected goals, 4 actual goals per 60, and over 200 minutes together. Shooting a little bit hot, but even if they're like 10 to 11%, they'd still be scoring very, very well. So with all that ice time, with a good 5-on-5 line, even in a tough matchup, I think you do have to consider them. It's the only line I'm considering from the Minnesota side. I would certainly rather play them than Andrei Kuzmenko, Scott Laughton, just to reiterate how insane that is. On the Utah side, I agree with you with Dylan Guenther. If I'm playing Utah tonight, I probably you have to. It's kind of like Montreal, right? Where Montreal's in such a good power play spot, you kind of have to put in line A. Utah it's not as good of a spot because Minnesota really doesn't take a ton of penalties, but their penalty kill's still really bad. So you do want to get Guenther in. So honestly, I would probably like a Keller, Guenther, Hayton, something like that. They also said I think Nick Schmaltz got banged up at practice today. It looks like he'll be fine. He'll play, but that's something that also concerns me a little bit. So I would probably build around Guenther and then, Hayton and Keller, or just, the Utah second line, or Keller, Guenther 2-man or something like that. That's probably the way I would build around Utah. And considering that they have a 3.2 total, they're at home against a bad penalty kill with a team missing a lot of key forwards. There's not that much ownership here on Utah. So really do like the Soakers here tonight. Whatever I do, I make sure I build around Dylan Guenther. I think he's the linchpin of any Utah stack.
Yeah, I agree. I just wish there was a better 5-on-5 matchup for him. That top line's in a pretty good spot, but yep. Vancouver Canucks. God, I hate this team. With a 2.9 total heading into Anaheim, the Ducks have a 2.6. Somehow, these two shit show teams have a 5.5. This game sucks.
And can we talk about how somehow this is a very important game for playoff implications for both teams? The Ducks might only be what? Like, if they win tonight, they could be only 5 or 6 points back of a playoff spot going into March.
Ryan Lindgren, come on down. Anyway. Ducks going Vetrano, Terry Strome, McTavish, Carlson, Killorn, Gauthier, Fabry, Lundstrom. Vancouver last night went Pettersson, DeBrusque, Hoglander, Besser, O'Connor, Suter, and Hedel, Garland, Joshua. It was Lankinen last night, and Demko's still hurt, so I think it's going to be our boy Artur Shivas. I think is it?
I don't think that's how you pronounce it, but yeah,
I get confused with the Mortal Kombat.
Shiva, the woman with 4 arms, the Goro woman.
That's what I get. How do you? I don't know. We don't need to pronounce it. I suck at pronunciations. We get it. I am the worst. Now, I don't really want to play an Elias Pettersson line. They are fully correlated on the power play unit with Quinn Hughes, which is just like, okay, cool. Like, they went 11-7 last night because they were trying to monitor Pettersson's minutes or Quinn Hughes' minutes. He's played 21 and change in an overtime game. I think they're going to go 11-7 tonight just to keep his minutes in check. This is a really good power play spot for Vancouver, but it's just like, I don't want to play Pettersson, DeBrusque, Hoglander at 14-8. They are fully correlated and they are coming in under 1%. They also are under 1% with the top 2 stack. So it's like, if you want to play them, I guess it's fine. I just don't. I think the line I have the most interest in on the Vancouver side would be Hedel, Garland, Joshua. They're fully correlated on the other unit for whatever that's worth with Hronik. They look good last night. They're 13-9. Like, I just don't have a ton of interest in Vancouver here. But these lines are priced to a spot where you got to consider them. So I'm in on Hedel, Garland, Joshua. If you want to play Pettersson, DeBrusque, Hoglander, fine. The Duck side is a little bit more interesting, which is an insane sentence. There's been a lot of insane sentences on this show. But I do have some interest in Vetrano, Terry Strome here. Like, yes, Quinn Hughes is back, and that helps them tremendously, but more so offensively than defensively. That top line has been very good. They are fully correlated. Artur, we'll call him. Artur S. is not a NHL goalie. So I don't mind Vetrano, Terry Strome here at 16-4. I also don't mind, Carlson, McTavish, Killorn as a filler at 12-5. So This game sucks so bad, but you have to consider both sides, I think.
I'll tell you right now, I'm not considering Vancouver.
I don't want to, but like,
I'm straight up not. In that 13 to 15K range, you have Jarvis Stahl Martinook from Carolina. You have Hagel, Sorelli, Gergensons. You have the Genther, Hayton, Carconi line that we just talked about, and you have 2 lines in St. Louis. I would rather play any of those lines than anything Vancouver has. So, I'm just out on the Canucks. On the Anaheim side, I think both their top lines are in play. Also, I think Fabry's out tonight. Sam Colangelo is coming in on the third line. It doesn't really change anything, but in case anybody was looking to play Anaheim 3, looks like Colangelo's going to be in for Fabry. But I think Vetrano, Terry, and Strome are fine to play just because they're going to get ice time with Zegras out. There's not a lot around that price range that I really want to play. Like, they're in there with like the Islanders and the Flames and, Buffalo. But honestly, I'd rather go play San Jose or Utah or Montreal or something. So not really in on Anaheim 1. It's Anaheim 2 where my interest is. McTavish, Carlson, Killorn, because they're at 12,500. They're a filler. The Carlson's been getting a little bit more ice time of late. At the low end, he'll be at 16. At the high end, McTavish will probably be close to 19 minutes. McTavish is on the top power play unit. McTavish and Carlson, 50 minutes together this year, 66 shot attempts, 2.9 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60. They've been pretty good. So I think McTavish, Carlson, Killorn at 12,500 is my favorite line in this game, especially with Shelov's in net. You're right. He's not an NHL goalie. He got lucky for a month last year for the Canucks. Good for him. It's a big step down from Lankinen. And so if I'm playing a cheap line out of this game, it's on the Anaheim side, and it's McTavish, Carlson, Killorn.
Yep. What a final game we have here. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.2 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.9 total. Don't know the Chicago lines. Don't care. I'm out. I'm just kidding. It's Bedard, Bertuzzi, Nazar. After that, I don't care. I'm still
no, the morning skate today was Bertuzzi, Bedard, Donato. Which
Donato being there is much better.
And it's perfectly correlated.
God damn it.
No.
How much? Nazar is 3,400. Donato's 4,800. They're 14-8. And I'd much rather play that than anything on Vancouver. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So Bedard, Bertuzzi, Donato, if you happen to get there, fine. It's a brutal matchup. I don't really want to play them, but of the Chicago lines they can make, of the best offensive lines they could possibly make, that's probably it. And
I honestly think this is the best possible line the entire Chicago Blackhawks organization can put together at this moment.
Yeah. Poor Bedard, man. But yeah, I'm still not running out to play them, but I'd much rather play them than Vancouver. If you happen to get there, you get there. The Vegas side is quite possibly very interesting. They have 3 lines that are doing stuff now in small samples, which is a lot different than a few weeks ago when Eichel.
They also had a morning skate with different lines today.
Damn it.
Sad, Eichel, Stone, Dorofeyev, Hurdle, Olofsson, Barbashev, Howden, Kolasar.
This is what happens when, I didn't. Okay, so Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Olofsson would be the line that I want to play. We were talking before the show, we mentioned it briefly about the Four Nations guys. Stone just isn't playing a ton. They're really preserving him. He is a dinosaur with a bad back, which we both can relate to. So it would be Hurdle, Dorofeyev, and Olofsson. It doesn't matter the matchup. They're all bad. All of Chicago's lines are awful. And the thing is, they have a semi-decent penalty kill, so you don't really have to power play stack. You still get Hurdle and Dorofeyev on the top unit. Olofsson is a shooter that fits well on this line. It would be Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Olofsson. If you want to go to Eichel, Stone, and whoever it was,
Brandon Saad.
Brandon Saad. I guess you can. Like, one off Eichel, I would play for sure. Like, I'm completely fine with that. But if I'm going to stack, it's Hurdle, Dorofeyev, and Olofsson.
Yeah, I mean, on the Chicago side, I'll just mention that top line because they are under 15K. They are perfectly correlated. That's always worth something. It's just on a slate this big, like, you know, St. Louis has a line that's on the road that's perfectly correlated that is in the same price range. Just talked about the Anaheim top line. They're a little bit more expensive, but it's not that bad. So, like, they're fine. But I'm not playing a line from a 2.2 total road team on a 12-game slate. It's just basically kind of it. On the Vegas side, like, I was looking at some of Brandon Saad's numbers with St. Louis. Like, he's definitely not the guy he was 5 years ago, but they weren't that bad. Like, average playmaking numbers, still good in transition. And honestly, I don't think I've only watched 2 of the games since he's joined Vegas. So, like, obviously I don't have a really big sample of my Brandon Saad watching since he's gotten to Vegas, but he hasn't looked like bad and or out of place. And, you know, his expected goals numbers are pretty good. And Eichel Stone Saad is 18,400, I think, which again is Scott Laughton, Andrei Kuzmenko territory. And they're at home against the Chicago Blackhawks. So, you know, you get 2 out of 3 on the top power play unit. I think Saad's actually going to fit in pretty well on that line. Like, you know, the last time they brought in a St. Louis Blue and put him on the top line in Vegas, he absolutely nuked, and that was Barbashev. So maybe Saad will do the same thing. Like, at 18,400, I just think that, you know, if this line was 21K, that'd be one thing. But they're the same price as, you know, Buffalo on the road in Carolina. They're the same price as Konechny, Kuzmenko, Scott Laughton, and these guys are at home against Chicago. So the second line for cheaper is perfectly fine, depending on what you want to do with your lineup. Like, both those lines are definitely in play. I just think compared to other lines in that like 18 to 20K range, it's basically like Vegas one and Detroit one that are drawing my attention.
That's fair. I mean, like, and it's not the best power play matchup, so having Saad on the line is completely fine. I just worry about, you know, them playing Stone like 15, 16 minutes at 6,200.
I mean, listen, 15, 16 minutes against the Chicago Blackhawks is like 20 minutes against most other teams.
Valid. Let's talk about defensemen here. The top of the board, 6K and up, we have Zach Werenski, Quinn Hughes, Evan Bouchard, Noah Dobson, Victor Hedman, Rasmus Dahlin, Moritz Seider. For me, it's Werenski 1, Moritz Seider 2, Victor Hedman 3. After that, like, I'm probably living in the mid-range or cheaper. Werenski keeps getting cheaper. I'm going to keep playing him. It's not one of those, like, put him in and build around, but at 7,300, he's definitely in play.
I mean, it might be put him in and built around, man. Like, he's got 40 DraftKings points in his last 2 games, and his price has gone down, and he's facing the Detroit Red Wings. Like, Werenski at the top of the board by stochastic projections. He's almost he's like 1.5 points higher than the next closest defenseman, which is Moritz Seider. So, like, it's clearly Werenski at the top. Seider, I think, is perfectly fine. So, like, both expensive defensemen in that game, perfectly playable. Victor Hedman, I think, is also playable at home against Calgary. But honestly, with Werenski only being $1,100 more expensive, I'd rather just find the $1,100 to go play Werenski. That's just kind of the thing. So, for me, I think it's Werenski, Seider. Quinn Hughes is interesting to me because it is a good matchup against Anaheim. And, like, if Vancouver does get 3 or 4 goals, he's probably going to have to figure in pretty heavily. My concern is that they do give him a night off, and then you get to those late games and you're stuck, like, playing like Alex Pietrangelo or something. And Pietrangelo is not healthy himself. So I think for me, amongst the expensive defensemen is Werenski or Seider. There's a lot of mid-price guys that I think are very worth it tonight. Like Jackson Lacombe, again, going back to him, I think is perfectly fine. Even though Brady Shea's not on the top power play unit, he's going to have to eat more minutes with Roman Josi out. Sean Durzee's at a very reasonable price. Travis Sanheim is in a great matchup. Jake Wallman is in a good matchup in mid fives. Mackenzie Weegar under 6K. Not a great matchup, but it's fine. John Carlson is in one of the best power play matchups on the board, and he's only 5,400. Mikhail Sergachev, for his price, I think is perfectly fine here tonight for Utah. He's only 5,100. So like, there's a lot of guys in that 4 to 6K range that if you don't want to pay up for Werenski or even Cedar, that there are some guys in that, a lot of guys in that range that you can go to. Shane Gostisbehere is back on the top power play unit for Carolina, so he's back in play at under 4K. Jonas Brodin, he's projecting very well for his price. Connor Murphy, Nikita Zadorov. I think he went down to like 21, 22 minutes in the last game, but that's still fine for this matchup. I'll mention Philip Broberg. I talked to you in Discord about him earlier. He's looking really good for St. Louis. Even cheaper, John Marino's under 3K for Utah. He's playing like 21 minutes. Dmitry Orlov's under 3K. He's in a really good home matchup. Justin Barron for Nashville. He's probably going to have to play more minutes too with Yossi out, and he's under 3K. And Nico Mikkola for Florida under 3K in a good home matchup against Edmonton.
Let's talk about some goalies. Do we have to? At the top of the board, if I was spending up, it would probably be for Andrei Vasilevsky. Above him is some guys that I don't particularly trust. Like Montembeault is a guy I like to play, not at 8,300, more like when he's at 7,100. So, like Charlie Lindgren's fine. I wanted it to be Thompson so I could play Thompson here. So it would probably be Vasilevsky in the expensive range. Honestly, like I don't mind Eric Comrie at 7,900. He's not Connor Hellebuck, but he's a pretty serviceable backup here. Vejmelka at home, 7,800 against a team with a 2.4 total. If I'm spending down, Lucas Dostal, 7,300. Dustin Wolf, 7,300. And then as a punt, like it would probably be Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, but I don't particularly love the super cheap goalies here tonight.
Yeah, Vasilevsky, he's the top of the projections, and he's at the top of my board as well. So Vasilevsky at 8,100 for the expensive goalie. I don't mind Aiden Hill at home against Chicago if you have the money for it. Like I'm not making an exception for him, but yeah, he has shutout equity against the Blackhawks, certainly. Vejmelka has the second highest point per dollar projection of any goalie here tonight, behind only Vasilevsky. So I think those, Vasilevsky and Vejmelka, especially Aiden Hill, I think you can throw him in that bucket. Those are kind of like the three expensive-ish goaltenders. Lucas Dostal for me at home against Vancouver really stands out. Vancouver isn't a shot volume team, and that concerns me. But the other thing that they're not is a good scoring team. So, like, I don't mind Dostal at home for Anaheim. Sam Ersson, I do worry about playing a Philadelphia goalie on the road, but he's projecting reasonably well at 7,600. There's not a lot of cheap goalies that I really want to play here tonight. Honestly, I think the one guy I would consider is Joel Hofer, believe it or not. Just because Washington, they are still sun running a little bit, and if that luck dries up, you're looking at games with 1 goal on 26 shots or whatever. So I think Hofer would kind of be the guy, but honestly, at 7,300, I think Dostal is the play for the cheap goalies.
Yep. We will be back Saturday, normal time. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Well, you shouted out his line in the Vegas game, so I'll shout him out here. I'll go Pavel Dorofeyev.
Fair enough. I do like that line. I'm going with the guy that you used to hate. You did a huge 360 on him, more than any other player since we've started doing shows together. I think this is our 4th full season. Lucas Raymond.
It's true. Didn't really like him, and pie in my face for that one. That's the way it goes.
Yeah. Can't be right about everybody except for me. I am a finished piece under museum glass. I can't pronounce anything, so who am I kidding? We will see you guys on Saturday. Good luck, everybody, tonight, and we'll see you in the Discord.
Good luck tonight, everyone.